Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Chesmore and I'm going to do a property review on servitudes and other related topics for the bar exam. So starting with servitudes, our definition of a servitude is a promise that runs with the land, a promise made by a purchaser or a primary owner of land that binds all future possessors and owners of the parcel. Now, the promise is enforceable as one or more types, as we'll explore in this video. The promise, if not enforceable as a servitude, may also be treated as a contract or a license. A license is defined as just mere permission to use or occupy land. Remember that a license is revocable at will. It's a gift without consideration, and so that's exactly why it's revocable at will. And if it's not classified as servitude, then, a license is not classified as a servitude. Also, a license is not transferable, divisible, or inheritable. It's usually temporary and limited to a specific purpose. Now, this promise that runs with the land that's made by the primary owner and binds all future possessors, this can be enforced as either positive promises, meaning that you can use my land for some purpose, or it can be used for negative purposes, such as you cannot use my land for this purpose. Servitudes are enforceable as an easement, or they're enforceable as covenants. We'll start with servitudes enforceable as an easement. For servitudes which are enforceable as an easement, we have positive easements. Now these are defined as either express or implied. Implied meaning that there's no writing requirement, and express meaning that the servitude is actually in writing, and it must be in writing or it must be implied, if not express. To be express, we need some sort of written instrument for express purposes, describing the interest in the land and signed by the party to be charged. There are 4 types of implied positive easements here. We'll get into the negative easements. We'll start with actually the 4 types of implied easements. These are positive easements. The first one that we have is estoppel, or an irrevocable license. Now this usually occurs when a licensee improves his land at considerable expense with knowledge and acquiescence of a licenser, and no reasonable other location over which a roadway could reasonably be built to provide an outlet for licensee's land. So think about different types of possible uses for estoppel or an irrevocable license. For example, we might have a road where a licensee might make improvements by using a road or developing a road, and it might go through another adjacent property owner's land. There's no other reasonable location where this roadway could be built. And so based on the acquiescence, and by that we look at facts such as knowledge, awareness, some sort of visibility of the licensor for the licensee to be able to use this. So those are the kinds of facts that we're looking for. Our primary motivation here is to look for unjust enrichment to revoke the license, where if we are to revoke this license, it might unjustly enrich the original licensor who acquiesced for quite some time, maybe had the licensee build a house with the knowledge that the road could be used for a substantial period of time, maybe indefinitely. We look for those facts, and so that is the first type. Look for no, remember these are implied, so we don't have express permission. So we look for things like words or conduct to assert acquiescence. Now, the classic example was in one case where there was an easement interest in land for a landlocked parcel, as we discussed, and that road that connected to that parcel that was landlocked. The second example that we have is a constructive trust. Now, a constructive trust might be, for example, where you have cabin improvements, but no land. You might own you might have a license to use a structure, but you don't actually, on paper or on title, own that land. and there's no right to any sort of defined term here. And so what we look for are facts such as a licensee made investments in reliance, or that conduct of licensor. So the licensor engages in a course of conduct that gave implied insurance. The license would not be terminated. And secondly, sorry for going here first. And secondly, licensee made investments in reliance on that conduct of licensor. Now, if these two are met for the constructive trust, then that amounts to an equitable lien. Now, the lien can be satisfied in one of two ways. You can either allow the license to make continued use of land for a reasonable period of time, or you can compensate that licensee for value of improvements made in reliance of insurances. So in that example of me working on a cabin connected to a road, the original licensor who decides to revoke that license, even though there might be facts that would say, oh yeah, I promise you that I'm not going to ever revoke that license. Or if there are facts such as, keep making improvements to my land and you can use it forever, we look to those facts. And in that case where the licensor decides to engage in a conduct that terminates that implied assurance, and that is the key word here underlined, implied assurance, then we look for a remedy in terms of an equitable lien by either allowing continued use of that license or compensating for any improvements to the land, which in this case would be perhaps improvements to a cabin, or depends on your facts. It could be any sort of improvements to the land, not necessarily tangible cabins or structures built on the land. Third, in our implied positive easements, we have prior existing use. Now in this case, we look for such a fact as drawn out here, where we've got land surrounded by adjacent parcels that kind of goes through. In the case of these three squares, imagine that they're parcels, and the middle parcel attempts to block the road for these other two parcels. So we look for some sort of servitude benefit. We look for a dominant and a servient parcel, which were once unified because they were once owned by a single person or entity. So imagine in our drawn hypothetical here that these three parcels were once under ownership by one common owner, and then they were subsequently divided over time and through conveyance were conveyed to multiple parties. And so that is one of the first requirements for prior existing use. Secondly, before conveyance that broke up the common ownership, such as maybe perhaps a probate matter where the land was split among three siblings, that owner used part of the unified parcel, what is now claimed in easement, for benefit of another part of the unified parcel. So if that owner relied on only one road to get from that left parcel all the way to the far right parcel, then that is the common ownership aspect of how that easement was used to benefit another part of the unified parcel. So in this case, we're looking at an easement of passage to